What's good, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Biggie Sweats. Wow, today I'm bringing you a guide on Augmentation Evoker and how you can get up to date and do some decent damage in the process in mythic dungeons and raids. It's so good to be back creating and getting more consistent with it again. I just hope you like the content that we are putting out. Now make sure you like and subscribe on the channel. Let's smash this 10k goal we've got, and come and check us out over on twitch.tv Monday, Tuesday, Thursday and Friday, where we play multiple MMOs and just get absolutely hype in the process. Now, straight into the guide. Like I said, we're going to be talking about Augmentation Evoker today and how we can make it good in raids and dungeon environments. Augmentation Evoker is a fresh specialization introduced in patch 10.1.5. This class is currently just exclusive to the Dragonflight race and is one of the new mid-range caster support DPS types that Blizzard is trying to implement into the game. The specialization provides a diverse talent choice tailored to various types of content, Mythic Plus, PvP, and raiding. You can play in anything you like. Augmentation Evokers utilize Essence as a regenerating resource, spending it on abilities like Eruption and Fire Breath to deal damage, and extend their big main ability, Ebb and Might, that affects everyone in the dungeon group or a select few in the raid group. Now, of course, the class comes with strengths and weaknesses. Now, some of the strengths for Augmentation Evoker is it has team support, one of the first of its kind. Augmentation Evokers excel in aiding team members capable of saving them with rescue and removing harmful effects using Expunge and Cauterizing Flame. It has adaptable damage output. The specialization strength lies in the versatile damage output stemming from buffing allies and contributes to significantly overall group damage. Basically, just giving everyone else this huge buff while still maintaining a decent amount of damage for yourself. Now, durability. Augmentation Evokers boast impressive durability to multiple defense options like Obsidian Scales, Renewing Blaze, Twin Guardian, Zephyr, and Defy Fate, a cheat death mechanic, so basically you're going to hardly ever die as this class if you play it right. Mobility. It has extremely high mobility and enhances maneuverability during encounters and ensuring optimal positioning, and it can help out everyone else with this too. Now, the weaknesses. Everything's going to be shown on screen, by the way. It has limited range. With a 25-yard range, players might need to adjust position and themselves effectively for optimal performance. But with the high maneuverability, it makes it a lot easier for this to happen. Allied dependent. Augmentation Evoker's damage heavily relies on allies, as a substantial part originates from buffing teammates. The efficiency is closely tied to group performance. Basically, your group needs to be performing well for you to be effective. Solo damage. When away from allies, Augmentation Evokers exhibit notably lower damage output, underscoring their reliance on team dynamics. So, outside of helping their group, they do have low damage, but it can be brought up in environments if you play properly. Now, these are just on the table pros and cons. Obviously, there is a lot affecting each situation of the game. It's influenced by encounter mechanics, group composition, and of course, player skill. Now, next up, we're going to be talking about the talents for Augmentation Evoker, dungeons, and raiding. First up, we're going to be talking about dungeon talents and what you can take for this to be effective. On the left side of the tree, we have Evoker, overall Evoker points. In row 1, we are taking Landslide, Obsidian Scales, and Expunge. Then we are taking in row 2, Natural Convergence, Permitting Chill, and Verbal Embrace. In row 3, we're going 2 points into Innate Magic, 1 point into Obsidian Bulwark, Scarlet Adaption. In row 4, we're taking Quell, which is our Interrupt, and Cauterizing Flame, which is like a Dispel. In row 5, we are taking 2 points into Instinctive Arcana, 1 point into Tip the Scales. In row 6, 2 points into Inherent Resistance, 1 point into Draconic Legacy, and 2 points into Extended Flight. Next row, which is 7, we're taking Blast Furnace, Source of Magic, and Panacea. In row 8, we are taking Oppressing Roar, we are taking Potent Mana, and Rescue. And finally, Renewing Blaze. In row 9, we are taking Leaping Flames, Aerial Mastery, Twin Guardian, and we are taking Fire Within. In the last row, we are taking Terror of the Skies and Zephyr. Next up, we have arguably the most important side and thing of the Augmentation Evoker, and that is its specific spec talents. Now, we're starting with Ebb and Might, which is the bread and butter of the spec and what causes your damage and everyone else's damage to skyrocket. So we're taking 1 point Ebb and Might. Next row, we are taking 1 point Eruption and 1 point Essence Burst. In row 3, we are taking Imposing Presence, reducing our interrupt cooldown, and ricocheting Pyroclast and Essence Attunement. In row 4, we're taking Upheaval, Breath of Eons, and Defy Fate. In row 5, we are taking 1 point Seismic Slam, Volcanism, and Chrono Ward. In row 6, we are taking Blistering Scales and Draconic Attunement. In row 7, I lose count so quickly, is Tectonic Locus, Molten Blood, Front of Magic, Aspects Fervor, 2 points, and Power Nexus. In row 8, we are taking Hoarded Power, Ignition Rush, and Prescience. In row 9, we are taking Momentum Shift, Infernal's Blessing, Time Skip, Accretion, and Anachronism. And in the final row, row 10, we are taking Interwoven Threads and Fate Mirror. Next up, we're going to be talking about raiding. I'm not going to go over every single one because there isn't huge changes. I'm going to just tell you which ones to take out and which ones to slot in. Now, when we're going over to raiding, we are losing Cauterizing Flame, we are losing Oppressing Roar, and we are losing Terror of the Skies on the left side. On the right side of the tree, we are losing Imposing Presence, we are losing Seismic Slam, and we are losing Interwoven Threads. Now, what we are replacing them with is, in row 5, we are going into Ancient Flame. In row 7, we are taking Unravel. And in the final row, we are going into Time Spiral. Now, the changes on the right side are, we're going into Pupil of Alexstrasza, Stretch Time, and finally, Plot the Future. These are the only changes made between dungeon and raiding. Now, when we're talking gear, we're always going to be looking at your best in slot. Yes, everything is simmable, and every time you get a new piece of gear, it should be simmed. However, augmentations can be very weird spec, so I'm going to tell you a few things that you can aim for. So, of course, the main thing you should be going for is the 4 set. Now, so easy to get, raid, dungeons. You can use the catalyst now to turn pieces into tier set. Extremely easy to get. Now I'm going to show it on screen, what it does, what it looks like, because it is a good looking set. So the 2 set of Augmentation Evoker, Ebb and Might increases the damage of your Empower spells by 30%. Just a flat out increase really, and you know, you don't really have to play any differently. Now the 4 set, Ebb and Might increases allies' primary stat by an additional 1% of your own. So what that means is with 4 set, every 1% of your own stat that you're getting, it's increasing everyone else's, which is a fantastic thing. It's sort of a no-brainer 4 set, whereas as you gear, you're just increasing net damage for other people. So next up, I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the other items you can go for key success. So the neck, you're going to want the Choker of Soul and Thunder from Vortex Pinnacle. Your cape is either going to be the Mammoth Trainer's Drape from Nelfarius or the Putrid Carapace from Nelfarian's Lair. Your rings are going to be the Scalebane Signet from Nelfarius and the Entropic Convergence Loop from Amalgamation Chamber. Now your weapon is going to definitely want to be the legendary that you have to grind out from Sarkareth every week with a chance to drop. If not, you can go into Ephros, the Empty Promise from Sarkareth, which is the staff. These are both great choices, but you're always going to be wanting to aim for legendary, whether you play Org or Devastation Evoker. Next up, we're going to talk about a very important part of gearing, and that is embellishments. And this is the order that I think you should be going in. So you want to prioritize the acidic Hellstone threads, as they're going to give you a nice single target boost in most encounters in Aberrus, but they do come with a 10% movement speed trade-off. Now, next up, I'm going to say the Toxified Armor Patch, as if you have gone the acidic Hailstone treads, this patch makes your boots perform as if you had a second pair. So that means it's boosting your damage output, but it's going to lower the speed even more. The next two, obviously you can only have 2 embellishments, so I'm just giving you other options that you can use, is the Shadowflame Tempered Armor Patch, a new gem added in patch 10.1. This adds a bonus of dealing Shadowflame damage with your abilities, but it's only for armor, not jewelry, weapons, or anything else. And then finally, we have the Adaptive Drakathis Arm Guards. These Arm Guards are versatile. They offer versatility, crit, mastery, and haste depending on your situation. So these 4 are probably the best ones you can choose from, but I would most likely always go for the Acidic Hailstone Threads and its armor patch to match with it. And the final section of gearing, probably one of the most important sections, is what trinkets we can use or aim for. Now, you know me, I always usually use Blood Mallet for this type of thing, but it's not supported. So, going off what I know, we are going to be going first off into Iridius Fragment. This is the forefront, and it's an off use trinket, offering heaps of mastery, your best secondary stat, and a massive 20-second surge of intellect when activated. The intellect boost gradually reduces with each ability cast, and despite its 3-minute cooldown not perfectly syncing with Breath of Eons, this remains to be the best augmentation trinket you can get. Next up, we have the Vessel of Searing Shadow, which comes from the raid. This intellect-based trinket dishes out passive damage while granting a splash of haste with each proc, and it's just a solid choice for an Augmentation Evoker's second slot. Now, then we have Rock Crystal Voodoo Doll, which comes from Brackenard Hollow. It's an intellect unused trinket that packs hefty damage. Since augmentation doesn't scale as well with trinkets, focusing on secondary stats, this is third in my opinion. Pair it with either of the other two trinkets. And then finally, just to state another one that you can use, a Genius Flowstone from Magmarax. It's an intellect trinket that alternates between boosting crit and dealing damage, and it's just a decent choice for augmentation evokers to use. And of course, with gearing, you're going to want to make any crafted gear that you can to replace your slots. Obviously, you can't have embellishments on them, but you can craft higher level gear in that regard. And of course, use your flight stones to upgrade your best in slot stuff. Don't bother upgrading stuff that you're going to be swapping out eventually. Now, next up, we're going to talk stat priority. A little bit different for augmentation evokers. So they have their armor pieces stat priority on screen as follows: item level, mastery, haste, crit, and versatility. Then on the right side of the screen, we have the jewelry and non-intellect item stat priority, which goes mastery, item level, haste, crit, and versatility. Now, the stats hierarchy: intellect's the champ, followed by mastery, haste, and crit, and then versatility. Rings and trinkets, though, they play by their own rules, considering their effects and secondary stat totals. Now, a heads up, secondary stats become less valuable after 30%, and this threshold matters more around 5,400 mastery, but for now, augmentation keeps stacking mastery like a boss. Now, for those that might not know what their stats do, so intellect is your bread and butter. It boosts your spell power and damage. Mastery is the core of your specialization. Empowered spells grant shifting sands, buffing allies, and extending auras. And Quick Strike boosts your abilities, chance to deal double damage, and Ebonmite's extension effects can crit also. Haste speeds up spellcasting and event effect ticks. And finally, versatility just amplifies your damage, healing, and reduces damage taken. Now, next up, we're going to talk gems and enchants and what's best for your character. You can focus on aligning them with your character's main stat priorities, such as your best gems will be the Skillful, a limited diamond, a must-have in one socket, and then the Sensei's Nelfrite or the Keen Nelfrite in all of your other sockets. Now, you're going to figure out what's best for you by simming it, or if you want to focus on bringing a certain stat up that you already know about, then you can choose between these two. Obviously, to boost your necklace, no matter what you get, you can add 3 sockets onto it. They're called the tiered medallion setting, and you can have up to 3 sockets on any neck that you have. Next up, I'm going to tell you the best enchants for your items. They're going to all appear on screen just like the gems. For rings, we're going to go Enchant Ring, Devotion of Mastery. For weapon, we're going to go Enchant Weapon, Sophic Devotion. Chest is going to be Enchant Chest, Waking Stats. Cloak is going to be Enchant Cloak, Graceful Avoidance. Your braces are going to be Enchant Braces, Devotion of Avoidance. Belt, you want the Shadowed Belt Clasp. Legs, you want the Frozen Spell Thread. And feet, you either want Enchant Boots, Watcher's Loam, or Enchant Boots, Plain Runner's Breeze. Remember, these enchant and gems are crafted around your secondary stats rather than completing primary ones. You'll be able to tailor these how you want them, mastery, haste, however you want to play. Of course, simming them for your best damage, but again, simming is very weird when it comes to augmentation evoker, so be very careful with that. Now, the final section of the gems, enchants, and consumables, potions, and all that juicy good stuff. For your files, weapon augments, and potions, we're going to go, the ultimate choice is going to be the Ice Vial of Corrupting Rage across all content. However, if you're weird about positioning and uptime, consider the Vial of Charged Isolation for maybe better results. Maybe. Weapon augments, you're going to want the Hissing Rune. Combat potion is going to be, of course, the Elemental Potion of Ultimate Power, as like every DPS class uses this. Of course, you want to be having refreshing healing potions on hand for any sticky situations. The best food is going to either be the Fated Fortune Cookie, Deviled Eggs, or the Grand Banquet of Kalawuk. And of course, if you can afford it, rocking a Draconic Augment Rune isn't going to be a bad decision. Now, next up, we're going to talk about rotation. Before we get into that, I want to talk to you about the buffs, as it is a very weird spec for someone playing it new. Now, the way the buffs work, so we have Prescience. Prescience ups the allies' critical strike by 3%. And with the Talon augments prescience and bestows 10% chance for all allies to deal 15% of triggering abilities damage. Now, this works on non-class damage like trinkets and embellishments. It applies fully to pets and guardians, and it always auto-targets the nearest DPS. So, meaning you don't have to like macro it into specific players. You can if you want to. If you want to up someone's specifically first on second, you can, but it will just automatically go on the nearest friendly player to you in a dungeon. Now, Ebon Might. So, empowers allies with a 10% primary stat and boosts your own damage by 20%. Now, this obviously changes with the 2 and 4 set. Its amplification via close as clutch boosts spell power and primary stat. Targets DPS allies with prescience. So, people that have prescience on them they're gonna get, you know, affected by this. Interacts with Mastery, Time Walker, and extends the Ebon Might duration, and smartly prioritizes active Ebon Might extension. So the way it works is very, very clean. The way WoW and Blizzard have designed this class is very clean to be a buff class. Now then, you've got Shifting Sands. This boosts versatility based on your secondary stat. Update every second to match your mastery percent, and prefers the closest DPS ally with Ebon Might. Then we have Blistering Scales. It grants an ally 30% of your armor and scales that explode for AoE damage. Has a 2-second cooldown on damage proc. Scales with your stats, including damage sourced from the target, and auto-targets the target's target. Now, Breath of Eons. It stores 10% of allied damage and explodes after a duration. Pair with a DPS player, cooldowns every 2 minutes, enhances class abilities and auto attacks but not external sources. It does work on pets, guardians, but no external effects. Then we have Spatial Paradox, healer friendly buff enabling casting while moving with double range, and defaults to the nearest healer if cast on the enemy. Now, these are the buffs. Yes, there's a lot going on. They're very simple, though, so give them a read in your spellbook and give them a read online. I've just listed out what they do and kind of how they work and interact with players in your party, and I hope that helps. Now, we have the rotation of Augmentation Evoker. That sounds weird to say. Now, it's very strange, because unless you're using a specific ability, the single target rotation and the AoE rotation remain almost identical because you're just throwing out damage and buffing allies. It's just the whole premise of the spec. Now, your rotational goals are to prioritize using Breath of Eons when allies have cooldowns, of course. Cast Prescience on cooldown, sustain Ebon Might for maximum duration, and empower spells for versatility via shifting stands and extending Ebon Might. That is your goal of the spec and what you're doing. Now, the rotation is as follows. You're going to use Prescience on the next Ebon Might targets, refresh Ebon Might with less than 4 seconds remaining, cast Breath of Eons if Ebon Might is up or has 4-second cooldown, pair active buff trinkets with Breath of Eons and Temporal Wound, using Rock Crusted Voodoo Doll on cooldown if you have it, Living Flame with Leaping Flames and Fire Breath on cooldown if you're using Leaping Flames, Fire Breath at Empower rank 4 with Ebon Might, Upheaval at Empower rank 1 with Ebon Might, Blistering Scales on the tank if none left, Eruption if Ebon Might is up and or capped on Essence, and just Living Flame, you know, in between when nothing else is up, and a Hover for movement, and if you're moving around, you can use Azure Strike. Now, some of the extra tips: in small groups, buffs auto target properly, so you don't have to worry, like I said before, about specifically buffing someone, as it, you know, prioritizes the buffs, which is a great thing. Manage Prescience overlapping when needed, optimize tip the scales on AoE, use Deep Breath or Breath of Eons efficiently, preemptive use of hover to avoid GCD loss. So if you can time your hover correctly with, you know, mechanics, you're not going to lose GCD cooldowns and stuff like that. Now, your cooldown usage: never cast Fire Breath or Upheaval without Ebon Might, tip the scales with AoE spells, apply Breath of Eons to all enemies, utilize Deep Breath or Breath of Eons at close range, and use hover proactively for movement. These are techniques you can learn as you're playing, but the single target rotation and AoE rotation are relatively similar and the same. It is all about buffing your allies and just using your Breath and Upheaval with Ebon Might at the correct times. And finally, that is it for me. I've been Biggie Sweats. Wow. I hope this guide has helped you, whether you're a beginner, whether you're a veteran, whatever it has done, I hope it has helped. I'm so glad to be back. It's a pleasure making these guys, and I find them so fun, and it's making me love WoW a little bit more as well with the load time we're having. So make sure we like and subscribe, and we comment on this channel. Thank you for those who made it to the end. And if you want more of Biggie, come and check us out over on Twitch, where we are partnered and we stream MMOs and a bunch of other games regularly. I will see you next time. Peace.